Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final session of today's Leader Talk. I'm so glad to have you comment, Sarah, that you've been to all five. Love it. Love to keep that spirit going. It's been such an engaging session, so I hope we finish it off with a big bang. So with that, this event is sponsored by Biz Library, ComLab India, HSI, Neovations, and Perceptual. And I am Liz Spate, the events marketing specialist here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Again, before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. So again, please feel free to use that chat window to interact with our speaker with any comments, as well as for questions. Please submit those questions in the Q&A section below. We will be addressing all questions throughout the session, so keep them plugged away. And at the end of your time here with us, you will notice a short evaluation survey popped open in another tab in your browser, and we'd appreciate your thoughts on today's event. And all of our sessions are being recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand program for you to share with the team. If this is your first Training Industry event, we would love to welcome you. We exist to make connections among learning and development professionals, and we offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D, like live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, membership, and our podcast. We would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media, so please follow us on your favorite platform so we can continue the conversation. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker. John Rood is the founder and president of Perceptual, which provides training and certification in AI safety, literacy, and implementation. He also teaches AI governance at Michigan State University and the University of Chicago. So with that, John, take it away.
All right. Oh. Let's see. So, oh, there we go. Just one terrifying second where it was not popping up my video, but now we're all good. Slides popping up here. 1 second. There we go. All right. Welcome everybody and hello. For those of you that have been with us all day, that's amazing. Thank you for joining. We'll try to make this a relatively high energy session. Hopefully we get a lot out of it. So let's jump right in. We're going to cover today AI regulatory compliance, bias, AI literacy, and safety in the workplace. So I'm hoping that this is a little different from the presentations that you've heard before. So we're going to be talking about compliance. We're going to be talking about how that affects us as learning and training professionals. But we're going to be talking about it with the spin of how do we actually put the right controls in place over AI itself. So hopefully this will be an interesting topic. Liz had already given me a great introduction, so thank you, Liz. I'm John Rood, founder of Perceptual. And what we do at Perceptual is a couple of things. Most of our work is in implementing AI governance and conducting AI audits. And we do that work for clients from startup to giant global 50 organizations. We were doing that work for about 3 years now. And then a funny thing happened about a year and a half ago, which is our clients called us back and said, okay, you've put our governance program into place. Why don't you come train our leadership team on how to keep our workforce safe and productive with AI. So we started our training division, started just with our current and past clients, and now our business is actually majority training. So I teach as Liz said, at the University of Chicago and at Michigan State, in addition to the work that we do for our clients. So I'm going to show you a question, but I don't want you to answer the question. Here's the question. What do you do with AI in your role today? You don't have to answer it yet. I was thinking about this question because I went to post on LinkedIn last week and I saw a new feature on LinkedIn, which I'd never seen before, which was I started my post and it said, here's a suggestion of a thing that you could post. And this was it, right? So this was kind of like LinkedIn saying, don't put any thought into your question, just like pop this question up. I've got a better question for you. And here's the question I really want you to answer. What do you think the most junior person in your organization does with AI in their role? There's my question. I'd love for folks to toss it in the chat here. So this could be anything from from exactly what they're doing to you don't know. Anything is great. So Katie says compose emails. That's awesome. Rewrite emails. Ask questions. Help with emails. Hearing a lot of emails. Oh, everything is AI driven. That's a good one. How do you do XYZ? Strongly regulated industry. I work in many strongly regulated industries. That makes sense. Script content. To know what to write in birthday cards. That's a good one. I'm going to steal that one for myself. Rewrite, brainstorm research. Incorrectly as a search engine. I would agree with that, Katie, for sure. And then use it in Word. A lot of people are using AI with Microsoft Copilot. That makes sense. How do I respond to someone's comment? Limited to specific roles due to cost. All awesome, awesome responses. So the reason I asked this question and not the prior question is as we think about, how do we implement AI and train on AI in our organization, we're really doing a couple different things. One is we are teaching our workforce how to get the most out of AI, but we're also working on how to protect the workforce and the organization from some of the challenges. And we're going to be talking about some of those challenges today. Just to give some background, about 75% of employees in white collar kind of computery roles report using AI at work. And most of the use of that is the things that each of you had said. So rewriting emails, working on spreadsheets, computer code is a big one for those of you who've got development teams, doing graphics, video is increasingly important in AI. And the vast majority of organizations do not have significant AI use policies in place, or if they do, the policy is usually highly restrictive. So saying like, here's all the stuff that you can't do. And so we're going to talk about that today and how to add some kind of nuances to those sorts of policies. One of the things I've observed over my time working with clients, I want to show you kind of two ideas that are going to impact how we think about AI. And one of them is that what I see with our clients is this curve, which I call the trough of sorrow, right? So if we're on the left side there, and this is our excitement graph, right? So we're going to give this a try. Then we say, oh my gosh, like this can write like Shakespeare plays and novels and produce, new classical music, et cetera. This is amazing. And then we think, okay, how are we actually going to use this in the workplace? And it becomes more challenging to actually put that into effect. There was recently research that came out of MIT that said that 95% of AI projects in large organizations fail, or the other way to say it is only 5% succeed, right? So that's where we get to this dip where we say we're going to try some stuff with AI. It doesn't really work very well, and then you can sometimes just give up on it. If we continue, which our clients usually do, we say, okay, well, I guess there are some use cases where AI can be helpful and useful, and then we kind of get to closer to that promised land where we go to LinkedIn and people say, oh, I've automated my entire department, right? We're not going to get to that point, but we're going to make progress and we're going to add value with AI. Here's the other way I think about it, which is, and I didn't invent this phrase, I wish I had, but the idea is that today's toys are going to be tomorrow's tools, right? So some of the things that we see pop up on LinkedIn, some of the, the demos that we see on, on X or wherever we look on social media, they may look kind of silly today. They're, not ready for business use, but pretty soon and, rapidly, they probably will be. And the corollary to that is that whatever AI you're using today is the worst AI you will ever use, right? The technology is going to keep going. It's going to very quickly advance. And as we work through that together, kind of like in our organization, it's really important that we're thinking not just of what is the technology today, but what does this technology look like 18 months out? How do we train for it? How do we govern it? How do we make it productive? How do we make it safe? That's what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to go through 3 ideas today. The first is, what do HR and L&D leaders need to know about AI compliance, right? And again, we're not talking about like using AI to create compliance videos, although that's great if you do that. We're going to talk about actually governing the use of AI in the workplace. Secondly, we're going to talk about how leading organizations deal with potential AI bias. Whenever I talk to an HR or an L&D audience and I ask, what is the biggest concern that you have with the use of AI? Bias is the big one for this audience, right? It makes sense. It's the right concern to have. We're going to talk about today. And then third, we'll talk about how do L&D leaders develop AI literacy at every level in the organization. How do we actually, take the things we're going to talk about today and bring them into our company, into our organization in a smart way. So let's jump into that regulatory side for a minute. And so the question is, why is AI being regulated? Well, there's a couple reasons. The first, of course, is that the technology is going at such a rapid pace that it's really hard to kind of see around those corners. And I think that a lot of our regulators, and we'll talk about some of the policies in a second, just wanted to do something, right? So want to do something related to AI, and regulation is something. Therefore, regulation must be done. Now, specifically, I think that in the HR world, in people operations generally, it's understandably being targeted about with regulations due to the high stakes nature of the decisions that we make about real people and their real lives, right? Like we should and are very concerned about how actual people are impacted by the use of AI, and HR is obviously a big one, right? We've all used HR in our, our hiring platforms, our ATS, our HRIS, all that stuff. We know the AI is in there. And as businesses go really fast to implement AI, there's definitely a big worry kind of in the regulatory community that social and environmental considerations may be ignored. So those are some of the reasons why AI is regulated. Let's talk about what some of those regulations look like so you get an idea of what we actually have to do. One of the first regulations around the use of AI in the workplace is this law called New York City Local Law 144. So this is a New York City law, and I always show this first because I want everyone to understand that it's not simply that we're going to have like a national law. Particularly, this particular administration has indicated that they're not particularly interested in regulating the use of AI. So it's not just at the national level. This happens at the state level. This happens at the municipal level, and we'll see it happens at the international level as well. So Local Law 144 applies to companies that hire in New York, whether they're based there or not. It requires third-party audit of what the law calls automated employment decision tools. So think about things like pre-hire assessments or resume screening tools or resume ranking tools. Those are tools that all of us probably use all the time in the HR world. We've been using those tools for 10 plus years. And this law requires audit of those systems. My company does those audits, right? So we're kind of deep in this world. The audit involves calculating different results for those tools across race and gender. Requires the companies put that information on their website publicly. Now, I will say on this one, the enforcement has been pretty lacking, right? So we've been working on this law for over 2 years. My guess is that the compliance rates are very low, and New York City has not been particularly good about enforcing it. But this law is on the books, and as we'll kind of see in the future, it's set the precedents for some of the things that come after. Okay, so after New York City Local Law 144 happened, everyone started to regulate AI. And as I mentioned, at the state level, municipal level, national level, international level, and everyone's sort of doing something different. And so 2023, 2024, that was very confusing. We talk about in our industry this tapestry of global AI regulation, and it wasn't really clear what was going to come out of that. But finally, I think at the end of last year and this year, we sort of start to see, a little bit of that opacity has become transparent, and we understand, what are the things that we're actually going to have to do in order to comply with all this range of AI regulations. And what we're going to end up having to do, and we're going to talk about in a second, is put together a system of AI governance. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the regulations that have kind of coalesced around this idea of AI governance, which we'll, again, define more in a second. One of them is what we generally call in our industry the Colorado AI Law or Colorado AI Act. Sometimes it's like SB 204 or something. It's got a number with it. We just call it the AI Act. So Colorado passed this regulation, and it's the first state that required really comprehensive governance of AI. The focus in this law is on preventing what's called algorithmic discrimination. And again, you can kind of see instantly how this is applying to the concepts that we learn about and have to implement in the HR and in the training world. So preventing algorithmic discrimination means that, in hiring and promotion, in the way that companies deal with people, that we're making fair decisions. Now, enforcement here has been delayed. This law was supposed to go into effect in February of next year. It's now delayed indefinitely, is my understanding, as the regulators in Colorado try to figure out what to do with this law, right? So kind of one of those things where, as I'd mentioned, regulators said, well, we have to do something, and this is a thing to do. Now they're starting to see some of the challenges of the law that they have passed. Now, that said, the law is still on the books. We expect that some version of it will go into effect. And when it does, this law will apply to developers of AI systems, which some of us probably work at organizations that develop AI systems, but most of us don't. And on the deployers of AI. And that's all of the rest of us, right? So I'm going to be shocked if, in the next year or two, there's any company that doesn't count as a deployer of AI. And again, specifically for us in HR and in L&D, we're usually using AI technology pretty frequently, right? It's in our products, it's in our HRIS, it's in our ATS. So most of us are using these things now. This law lays out really specific requirements around what it calls an AI management system. And there's pages and pages of what an AI management system looks like. But then it says that if you have implemented one of what it calls a recognized international standard for AI governance, that you're A-OK, right? That you have an affirmative supposition that you have complied with the law. So what does that mean? What are these international standards? Let's take a quick look. One of them that you're going to hear a ton about is a framework called ISO 42001. So if you have spent any time with our friends in cybersecurity or in data privacy, you've probably heard of things like SOC 2 or ISO 27001. Those are, again, in the data privacy world, the information security world, but these are standards that are put into place by ISO, which is an international body that then certifies that companies have actually done those things. ISO has recently released, it was last year, this new 42001 framework, which is about AI governance. So this is a certifiable standard for AI governance. Will look similar to things that we've done in our organizations for data security, as I had mentioned. And it requires a really substantial implementation of safety and governance standards. So this is a thing that's not just going to fall on HR. It probably doesn't primarily fall on HR or on training, but I mention it because it's definitely going to impact the way that we do things, both because it will change the way that we use AI in the workplace, and also once we put this great governance system into place, we have to train on the system. Not only because it's a good idea, it's actually embedded in this framework, right? So the framework says you have to do all this stuff, and then you have to train your workforce how to actually put all this governance into place. So this is going to be a really popular standard. You're going to start to hear a lot about this, and HR and training is going to have a big part in putting it into effect. The final one I'm going to show, and I'm going to be really brief on this one, is what's called the EU AI Act. Some of us may say like, okay, we're not a big international organization. Most of our business is in the US. But what we've seen when the EU passes regulation, oftentimes companies in the entire world end up complying. And the best example of this is, you may remember GDPR, right? So remember overnight, like everyone had to have those like "we accept cookies" banners on their website, right? That's GDPR. And most websites and most companies decided to comply. So we're going to see something really similar. The EU AI Act defines a set of what it calls high-risk systems. There's a bunch of those on the right side. You will see that things like education and training are on there. And the employment and management of workers is there too, right? So these are the worlds that we run in, right? So there's going to be regulation of kind of the tools that we use. Now, I'm going to show you a scary slide. Again, you don't have to read it. I'm just going to show you the scariness of it because it's scary to me too. This is one section. This is Article 9 of the EU AI Act, which defines the risk management system that companies have to put into effect in order to be compliant with this regulation. So I'm not going to read it all. I don't think you should read it. I have read it, obviously. I'm just not going to read it to you now. But I show this to you because these are complicated systems, right? These are not changes or systems that are able to be put into an organization overnight. So if your organization is starting to think, well, wait a second, like some of our customers are starting to ask about, how we safeguard the use of AI, how we train our workforce to use AI properly. These are systems and processes that take months to years to put into place. Months in a small organization, probably 6 to 18 months at a larger organization. So I've talked a little bit about AI governance. I want to talk for a second about what does that really mean, right? So all these regulations that we've talked about have ended up pointing at the system of what we call AI governance. What actually is that? To me, it is the framework of policies, regulations, and practices that are designed to ensure the ethical, transparent, and accountable development and deployment of AI systems. Okay, great. It basically says, here's the best practices for the use of AI. Now you create policies for your organizations that actually put that into effect. Governance will usually include the principles, values, and goals of the organization. There's always what's called a risk management program, which talk all day about that, but we won't. Policies and procedures, and again, this is why this is relevant to us, ongoing training. We're going to be a part of this, whether we like it or not. But what is our role going to be in AI governance? It's going to be a couple things. First of all, AI risk management frameworks will all require establishing cross-functional teams to oversee the use and the regulation around AI, right? This is a really important part of all the frameworks that we've looked at. It says, AI cannot just be governed by like the technical person, right? It can't just be like the CTO. They all say, we've got to bring in people throughout the organization to work on our AI governance. So that may be an internal team, it could be board members or investors, but the best practice is to include non-technical contributors who are not directly working on AI projects. And as I've already said a couple times, the AI governing team member has to be trained on AI governance, right? And so so you're kind of seeing how this all ties together. We have to have a set of people that are going to govern our AI in our organization. We need to make sure that those people are trained up on the challenges that they're facing in terms of AI governance, and we have to make sure that our people who are using the system are trained up on it too. Okay, let's see. Are there any questions? Liz, do we have any questions pop up?
Not so far, but a lot of good comments.
Okay, we'll keep rolling. So, issue the second. How do HR and L&D leaders deal with the issue of AI bias? And let me first set the stage a little bit for why we talk about this, right? I think you can't talk about regulating AI in the world of HR and L&D without talking about the world of bias, right? As I mentioned before, it's the number one concern of HR leaders when I discuss this issue with them. So why do we hear so much about AI bias? What does that even mean? Well, AI is trained on huge amounts of data, right? So maybe you've read about, how ChatGPT gets trained. Basically, it goes out and hoovers the entire internet, brings all that information together. And when that data includes some of the biases that exist in society, those biases can end up being replicated throughout the decisions that the AI makes. And when that happens, the decisions that the AI make can be biased as well. So that's a very high level, like 15-second explanation of an extraordinarily challenging topic. So we're just going to hit the high notes a little bit today. Let's talk about one way that kind of AI is used in the workplace, and one of the things we'll kind of have to safeguard a little bit. So this is a situation that our company ended up addressing with one of our clients, where we had a home healthcare organization that employed many nurses. One of them was, high performing, but English was not her first language, and her notes oftentimes had, grammar mistakes and issues like that, which, not a big problem. But they noticed that one day these notes become flowing kind of Victorian prose, and you can sort of see, if you've been, if you've managed a team before, kind of what some of these challenges are, that this nurse was using AI to write the notes, right? So that's a big challenge. And the point is, your employees are using AI in their product today, whether you kind of like it or not, whether you know about it or not. We talked about that a little bit in the beginning. Let's talk about another example, and this is one of those examples that's talked about all the time in our industry, specific about AI bias. So there was a large software company that wanted to use AI to screen software engineering job candidates. So they train an AI algorithm with the resumes of engineers who are already top performers on the team. Most of those engineers were men, right? That was the makeup of the team at the time. And then the system starts to rank men more highly, right? So you can see the challenge here, right? So we have a certain set of training data, right? The AI is trained on training data. That data is mostly men, so the AI starts to rank men more highly. So, okay, fair enough. That's not good, right? So we know the people that looked at this, that were putting this algorithm together, said, well, that's obviously clearly not good. So seeing that wasn't the right thing, they reprogrammed the algorithm to not consider gender, right? So specifically say you cannot give higher scores to men because they're men. So then the algorithm starts to rank applicants more highly that played male-coded sports like football, and lower scores to people that played more, female-coded sports like field hockey, for example, or who went to an all-woman college, right? So you can see the issue here, right? And there, in this situation, it's not that the makers of the algorithm were trying to do the wrong thing. Wasn't because they were evil. They were trying to get this right. But the system was smart about trying to route around some of the precautions in the system in a way that ultimately leads to a biased output. So when we talk about bias, this is kind of like the prototypical case study. So what do we do about it? And again, like I'm very aware, like this is a like a PhD level problem, where we're going to talk about it in 5 minutes. So we're just scratching the surface. But what do leaders, and particularly HR and training leaders, do about AI bias? Well, first of all, HR leaders play a dual role. We talked about this before. So one is mitigating bias in our hiring tools, right? Making sure that the tools that we use are fair, easier said than done. And we have to train the rest of the workforce on these issues, right? So we have to make sure that, not only is like our house doing the right thing, but that the rest of the house are doing the right things as well. Third-party audits are the gold standard for bias reduction. As I had mentioned, there are certain regulations in some jurisdictions that require third-party audit. You say, like, you might ask, what is an audit? Well, an audit fundamentally is either a third party, or you can also do it internally, coming in, looking at these numbers and making sure that, for example, in our hiring process, that our pre-hire assessments are returning fair results. And this is not new, right? So, managing bias in the hiring processes is not new. This is all required by Title VII, which is 50-ish years old now. So in the HR world, we've been doing this before. We have to continue to do this for AI tools. Now, the most important place to do this is in our selection and management of our vendors. Again, most HR and learning leaders are not like tapping out their own AI products for internal use. We're going to get these from vendors, right? So the AI comes into our organization in our HRIS, our applicant tracking system, our performance management system, et cetera. And every vendor that you should consider, don't consider a vendor if they don't do this, should have a really significant program around bias mitigation. They should have their own systems audited, but you have to go and ask those questions. Okay. Let's see. Moving forward, do we have any questions there before I move to the next section?
Yeah, no, there was a really great question that came up.
Right.
And it was, how can L&D teams start building AI literacy across different levels of the organization, especially among non-technical staff?
Oh my gosh. Do I have the final part of the presentation for you? Hang with me. That's gonna be the entire last part of what we're gonna talk about. So let's spend our time there. So here it is on the screen. How do leaders and leading organizations train their workforce in AI literacy? That's what we're going to talk about the rest of the time here. Let's kind of start by talking about some of the why. And the why is the challenges or dangers in the use of AI in the workplace. And again, I'm a very pro AI person, so we're not going to talk about the Terminator or anything like that today. Like, these are actual very present problems in the workforce. One of the challenges that organizations started to run into is this issue with deep fakes. You might have heard about this, particularly around the presidential election. A deep fake is a video or audio message that's created by AI that mimics someone else. So here is basically a deep fake I made of myself, right? So you can see that's me in my office. Okay. All right, so I trained this avatar of myself with a very short video snippet that I uploaded, and you can see like that pretty much looks like me, right? I think it's kind of like a sour face there. It looks a little bit dead in the eye, but that's a pretty good reproduction. And I was able to make this with a program called HeyGen on heygen.com in 15 minutes, right? So with the video and audio capabilities of AI developing really quickly, we're going to see a number of kind of scams or fraud being committed in the workplace. Here is a great example of this. So a finance worker pays $25 million after a video call with deep fake chief financial officer. This was in Hong Kong. So someone sends a calendar invite to this worker, says come join me on Zoom at this time. They pop on Zoom. They see the face of their CFO. They hear the voice of the CFO, the face and voice of the CFO together say, wire $25 million to this number, and they go do it, right? Because that's kind of what you would expect. And of course, this was a deep fake. So this is a real challenge in the workplace. We are going to see lots more fraud in the workplace as AI enables that to be much more personalized and to operate at scale, right? So some examples there in the bullet points. AI systems can scrape your personal information off the web. So you get a call, it says, "This is Susan from marketing. I hope you had a great vacation to Disney World 3 weeks ago. I need a favor." Imagine getting that call, right? You actually went to Disney World 3 weeks ago. You post about it on Facebook, and AI finds that and is able to kind of use that to enable a scam. Next is the AI generated deepfake audio and video will be increasingly indistinguishable. So, just leaving you a voicemail to go with my email. Did you buy those gift cards yet? We've all probably seen the gift card scam a little bit. It's going to get better and better. And those sorts of scams are just going to be more common and better, right? So we're gonna have to train our organizations on those safety issues. One of the other challenges is hallucinations. We've probably heard about hallucinations with regard to AI. And in simple words, a hallucination is the AI just being wrong, right? Putting out an output that is not true. AI systems are historically bad at saying they don't know. As a bit of an aside, this is something that, as your workforce or you personally get better and better at prompting the AI, you start to learn more about how to reduce hallucinations. So this is a trainable skill for sure. But hallucinations occur oftentimes when you ask for an answer that doesn't make sense, or you give instructions that don't make sense, or you ask something that the AI doesn't necessarily know. Okay, we've all probably seen this before. Like, we've used AI, it's been wrong. We've got that warning there at the bottom in red. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Why does it matter? Well, here's an example. So in this situation, a lawyer used ChatGPT in court to get past cases of precedent to put in their legal briefs, and ChatGPT just made the cases up, right? Just like Smith versus Allen, 1973 or whatever, just made it up out of whole cloth. And now obviously this is going to end poorly for the lawyer, right? So we want to make sure that these things are not happening in our workplace. Hallucinations can be really significant challenges. Another risk of AI in the workplace is that it opens the door to issues around intellectual property and data security. Now, this is again a topic that we can talk about for as long as you might like. We're only going to scratch the surface here. But it's important to know that different AI systems have different policies for the use of the information that you upload, and that there's a risk that the AI could misuse the information that anyone uploads to its system. So it could use it for training data. And in fact, that's pretty common on the free tier of most common AI systems. There's also a number of ways that scammers or hackers can try to reverse engineer the AI system to give up some of its training data, right? So it's called a reversal attack sometimes. We won't get into that too much here, but those are real risks. So the risk is that without specific contractual information, it's not clear who owns information once you upload it into AI. And it's also sometimes not clear who owns the outputs from that system, right? So if me and my competitor both ask AI to make a logo, and it turns out it gives both of us the same logo, who owns that logo? Is it one of us, both of us, neither of us? It belongs to the AI makers? Who knows? This is starting to hit the legal system in a big way. So we are seeing things like this big lawsuit between the New York Times and OpenAI. What's going to happen, or the way that I predict that this plays out, is that more and more companies, more and more media companies will charge AI makers to take their data and to train on that data. Reddit actually is charging, I'm going to get the number wrong, I think it's off the top of my head, something like $50 million a year to the OpenAI in order to train on Reddit data. So that's going to be a real challenge. We just have to think about how this is happening in our own workplaces. So there's some just really common sense things that we need to make sure that we're training our workforce to do. We need to make sure that we're absolutely not allowing uploading of confidential information to the free or personal levels of AI systems. And the corollary to that is that your company really has to invest in some of those enterprise grade tools. Now, I had referenced at the beginning of our discussion today this MIT study that said that, roughly 95% of AI system implementations fail. One of the big reasons is that, all of us as kind of like as just citizens of the world use these free AI systems and realize that they're great, and then we want to use it at work. We go in and try to use it at work, and either it's banned or our workplace has bought something that's not as good because it's really locked down. And those are kind of the friction points of the use of AI in the workplace. So what are we going to do? Let's talk about it a little bit. I have a question for you, which is, does your organization have an AI use policy? For some of you, I already know the answer is yes, because a couple of us said that it's effectively banned in our workplace. Yes, not yet, yes. Yes, process is being built. Awesome. As you know, one of the great things that I see is that as I give similar presentations over the last 3 years, this used to be all no's, right? Now we're getting to like many yeses and many in process. So that's awesome. The first step that I think that we have to think through, we're going to get to the use policy in a second, but I think basic AI literacy and safety training is a really important first step. So what you see here is, we do this all the time. Like, as I said, we provide this kind of training. So this is a little bit of what we might teach in a course like this, and I'll actually make one available to everyone today. But this is the first step, right? The first step is making sure that everyone in the organization is at least somewhat familiar with some of the challenges with the use of AI. Again, it's really hard to just ban something in the workplace, especially something so useful and helpful as AI. But if we are not teaching our workforce what those challenges are, we're really not equipping them with the information to make the right choices. And you can kind of see the learning objectives there on the right. So understand why AI is so important, recognize those pitfalls, resolve to follow the company procedures and best practices, right? Again, that goes back to the AI use policy, and incident response is really, really critical. So making sure that we all know, similar to if we have a data security problem, or if we've got something like, we've leaked some personal identifiable information some way, there are really specific steps that companies have to take when that happens, and we have to make sure that we have incident response as well. So that's kind of this is what I would consider kind of like the 101 level of AI literacy, where everyone, in my view, should do this throughout the entire organization. We signed a deal yesterday to go train 1,400 people globally in an organization that just came to us and said, we've some AI training for our executives, but we think everyone in the organization needs to benefit from this. I agree. Internal AI use policies, I think, are really, really critical. That's why we talk so much about it. These are kind of the two sides of the coin in my mind for what L&D leaders can and should be doing immediately, right? So one side is the training, the other side is the use policy, right? So we walk clients through this 5-step process, which involves identifying the process owners, creating an AI registry. That's really, really critical. You may have heard this new term, pretty new, I think, called shadow AI. Shadow AI is just the idea, and we've mentioned the concept several times already today, that in your organization, many, many, many people are using AI, kind of whether you like it or not, whether they're doing it in an approved way or not. And if you say like, okay, so-and-so summarize this article for me, don't use AI, right? Like, they still want to use AI, and they might find a way to do it. So we have to get a registry created of every use of AI in our organization first. Then we draft the policy, right? Which is that's the obvious step. We conduct training, right? That's really important. Can't have a policy that makes any sense without training. And then there has to be ongoing iteration, right? So the AI use policy is, to me, very different from things like, our sexual harassment policy, right? So our sexual harassment policy says, here's the stuff that you can't do, right? Period, right? And that makes perfect sense. And that's the right approach for that sort of an issue. The AI policy is different because it's not simply banning things, or in my mind, it shouldn't just ban things. Instead, we're weighing risks. We're weighing the benefits of the use of AI in the organization of, speed, automation, innovation, et cetera, against the risks that we have identified today. And the way that we do that ultimately is we say, here's the use cases that are okay to do with AI. Here's the use cases that you should not do with AI. And similarly, here's the tools that are approved to use in the workplace. Here's the tools that are not approved to use in the workplace. That step 5 is so important. if you do not have a specific way that new tools and new use cases can be vetted and either approved or denied in, to me, about 2 weeks, your policy is not going to work, right? You will start to see shadow AI kind of creep around the edges. So, last couple ideas here. What should you do tomorrow? So the first is to establish your organization's AI use policy. Many of you have already done it. That's amazing. Second, understand which regulations may impact your HR tools. And again, like there's going to be a conversation around AI compliance and AI governance. That's going to happen between the executives, IT, HR and L&D, and the product people, right? Because the product people are the ones who actually want to build and use AI. That's a big question, right? But it's one that we should start asking in our organizations. And then third, plan for AI literacy training from your team. Really important. One little word about us. What do we do? I've mentioned a couple of things that we do, but Perceptual does AI upskilling training that we focus on literacy and safety. So the issues that we've talked about today, but we also go through things like a 3-course progression on AI prompting, from really basic training through the course that we actually just launched it this week. It's amazing. It's called Mega Prompting, which is like multi-page prompts with a lot of markup language. Really interesting stuff. Secondly, we do AI governance implementation for organizations of every size. And then we do AI bias audit and compliance work. So people come to us and say, we remember you put up the slide of Article 9 of the EU AI Act, and it was 6,000 words. Just help us figure it out. We help you figure it out. Okay, I'm going to make sure to save the last couple minutes here for any questions. I would love it if you connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm going to put my LinkedIn here in the chat. Love to hear from you. Email me directly with your questions. And we're, for a limited time, for the folks on this call, making AI literacy training free. Pop in, learn a little bit about it. A lot of it will be what we've covered, but you can kind of see how that might roll out to your organization, which I think would be valuable. All right, any questions?
I will say that you are just so educated on this topic. You left many people speechless in the chat, saying this was great. I'm sharing this with my team. So it was very light on questions because I think you addressed so much in all one. But I think the number one question that we always hear, and I bet many in the audience feel like, is what is the best way to help, HR professionals feel confident, challenging, or questioning AI-driven recommendations? How do they navigate in this space with all of, the biasness and all the things that you mentioned today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think there's a couple ways to do it. So number one is to make sure that you're keeping up on what's happening in the world of AI. And there's a million newsletters for AI. I've subscribed to one called Ben's Bites, right? It's run by my buddy. It's free, right? You subscribe to it every day. He sends you some news about AI. And the amazing thing about AI is if you compare AI with like computer programming, right? Like you have to go to college for computer programming and like get all this experience. It's really challenging. AI, I think most people in most companies that aren't like Google or, OpenAI can be one of the top people in terms of experience with AI in their organization. If you study this stuff for like 4 weeks, right? Like you can really learn this material really quickly. And the way that we do that is look for courses. So there's tons of courses online in AI. You just get out and use the tools and make sure that you are keeping up to date with the things that are happening. Also, go to our website, join our newsletter. We send out more kind of like compliance-y, training-y stuff that should be interesting. If you sign up, as you might expect, if you sign up for the free course there, you'll probably get our newsletter as well. So there's lots of resources to keep up with this kind of stuff.
Perfect. Well, that is all the questions that we have today. Is there anything else you would like to leave with the audience, John, before we say our goodbyes?
Just want to thank everybody for attending. I know it's been a long day, and Liz wanted to thank you. I'm sure it's a long day for you too. So thanks a lot.
Of course, appreciate it. Definitely connect with John. He's an amazing guy. So if you want to nerd out on all of this stuff, he's your go-to. So thank you so much, John. I appreciate you. And for everyone else, not a full goodbye just yet. I have some things I do want to share, of course. I do want to do a big shout out to all of our dynamic speakers and sponsors, Biz Library, ComLab India, HSI, Neovations, and Perceptual. So thank you so much. Again, all of our sessions today are pre-qualified for a credit hour by SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, or CPTM. So send emails to me or anyone else, and I will send you those codes as soon as possible. Additionally, it is that time to talk about the Training Industry Conference and Expo TICE. We are returning June 16th through the 18th in 2026 in Raleigh, North Carolina. So right now we do have our early bird special all the way through December 31st, where you can register and save $400. So I hope to see you all there. Can't wait. Additionally, strategically align your training initiatives with key business priorities for lasting impact from planning to implementation. Start your journey with a roadmap for success with the strategic planning workshop. Additionally, one last reminder, that survey will pop open in another tab in your browser, and we would greatly welcome your feedback. Thank you again for joining us. And I see, Sydney, you are asking for my emails, so I will give that to you right now. So yes, thank you all for joining us again. Until next time, I'm Liz. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see you all very soon. Bye, everybody.